So we come now to our last speaker, and that is Nazir. Nazir comes from Lebanon.
Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues, safeguarding professionals, educators, researchers, faith leaders, and child protection advocates. We come to you from Lebanon. It's a small, war-torn country where Christian communities often find themselves caught between forces far beyond their control. Yet, excuse me for my voice, yet as researchers deeply committed to protecting children, we have learned that resilience is not simply endurance. It is the decision to keep working with purpose and passion, even when conflict hangs over our heads for years and years, and so far for 75 years. This cause gives us the strength to rise above fear, momentarily forget the war around us, and continue speaking for children whose safety cannot wait. Now, I'm going to cover today only one aspect of our work because I am a professor at Notre Dame University in Lebanon, and I am the president of NGO Lara. Lara is the name of my youngest child, and I've noticed about 12 years ago that she was developing some kind of addiction to the internet, and this is where the journey started, and I was the pioneer to create some scales that measure addiction in Lebanon that now are used by more than 16 Arab countries. And let me begin with a simple but disturbing thought. Today, a child or a parent, relative, or friend sharing an image of that child can post an entirely ordinary photograph, a school photograph, a sports photograph, or a family photograph. Within minutes, that image can be copied, manipulated, sexualized, circulated across borders, and made almost impossible to retrieve. Whether the child never consented to all or voluntarily created or shared an image within a particular context, that does not constitute consent for the image to be manipulated, sexualized, redistributed, or used as a means of coercion. And I'm really sorry to mention this, but I wasn't very happy to see the images of those children being harmed, because this is a kind of redistribution, and that is my point of view, and excuse me for this. Or used as means of coercion. In every case, fear, humiliation, reputational harm, and violation, they are real. So this is the new safeguarding reality. Our presentation examines risk factors associated with technology-facilitated child sexual exploitation and abuse. This term used to be online child sexual exploitation and abuse, but today we are adopting the term technology facilitated, because it's not only about online today. You have so many technologies around that are facilitating the child sexual exploitation and abuse. So this is why we're using the short term that starts with TF instead of O. So we're examining risk factors associated with TFCSEA through an intercultural lens. We ask not only which children are vulnerable, but also which environments produce vulnerability, which systems fail to interrupt it, and how must prevention change in the age of artificial intelligence. We gratefully acknowledge Safe Online for supporting this study, and we are especially pleased to contribute to this conference theme, One Commitment, Many Contexts. The commitment is universal. Every child has the right to safety and dignity, but the context in which we must deliver that protection are deeply local, relational, and increasingly technological. Next slide, please. Now, while, next slide, I'll move to this one. Okay. Now, digital technology does not invent every form of abuse, but it changes the conditions under which abuse can occur. It gives harm 4 dangerous accelerators. They are right here: speed, scale, persistence, and reach. Speed means the coercion, manipulation, or distribution that can happen before a parent, teacher, or safeguarding professional even knows that contact has begun. That is speed. With respect to scale, that means that one can reach hundreds, thousands, and even millions of people, okay, worldwide. Persistence means that a harmful image may survive long after the original post is removed. Copies, screenshots, re-uploads, and private circulation can repeatedly return the child to the moment of violation. And reach means that the perpetrator, victim, platform, server, and law enforcement authority may all be in different countries, operating under different laws and cultural expectations. This is why prevalence figures are not enough. We hear lots of statistics, and even in in our posters, we mentioned that 1 out of 12 children are subject to child sexual exploitation and abuse. Okay? Despite this, this is not enough. We must understand the context in which vulnerability develops, how a child uses technology, what emotional support surrounds the child, who has access to that child, what forms of trust are being exploited, and whether there is a safe route to disclose what happened, a safe route to that child to disclose what happened. Digital safeguarding must therefore move from reaching to isolated incidents toward understanding an ecology, an entire ecology of risk. Online solicitation dominates the TFCSEA evidence base. Our first major finding is a warning about the evidence base itself. Online solicitation receives the widest research coverage nowadays. Non-consensual sexual media receives less attention. Sexual extortion receives still less. Other forms of online sexual exploitation remain comparatively under-examined. Online solicitation has been studied for longer and can be measured relatively easily through surveys. Okay, this is why researchers go into this path. Okay, so it is more difficult to conduct research in the remaining areas than the first one. Now, this creates, as we see it, a dangerous possibility, because what we know best, okay, like about online solicitation, may not be where the greatest harm is occurring. Okay? And research attention, therefore, can shape funding, prevention programs, professional training, and policy. If the evidence is concentrated on solicitation, safeguarding systems may become very good at looking for a stranger initiating a sexual conversation. Like if you take this as a key takeaway today, then people might be working in this area. However, there are the other remaining areas where, okay, people who are into this that should be prepared for, let's say, maybe a classmate creating a deep fake. A classmate might do this. Not necessarily beware of strangers. No, a classmate might do this. An intimate partner might also end up misusing an image that was taken at a time of romance, and extortion network weaponizing synthetic content. So we need to be also aware, okay, of the fact that while research is focusing on some areas, and I mentioned one of the reasons, okay, why is that happening? Because the methodologies that need to be followed in other research areas is much more demanding, time-consuming, and that requires lots of professionals working in the field in addition to resources too. So not everyone is prepared to spend that much time to invest that amount of money on this. So our takeaway is not to reduce attention to solicitation, but to widen the lens. Every subtype has different pathway, a different relationship structure, and potentially a different prevention strategy. We cannot protect children from tomorrow's abuse using only yesterday's risk model. So I might give you a model today, and tomorrow there will be new technologies. The perpetrators will find new ways to abuse children, okay, that we need to be prepared for. Okay, so we have to be in a constant research and, trying to find ways in order to safeguard children. So having mapped where the evidence is strongest, let us now examine what that evidence repeatedly identifies. This slide maps the studies where the studies concentrated their attention. Digital and behavioral risks appeared in 90.3% of the included studies. Remember here, we have reviewed tens of studies, and I'm conveying to you, okay, the outcomes of studying this literature. Okay, making this by far the most frequently examined domain, researchers repeatedly focused on visible online behaviors, including platform use, okay, personal disclosure, contact with unknown users, sexualized image sharing, and movement from online interaction toward offline contact. Individual and psychological factors appeared in 71% of studies. These included psychosocial distress, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, prior victimization, and difficulties with self-regulation. demographic and developmental factors appeared in 67.7%, particularly gender, age, maturity, and developmental vulnerability. Okay, so what I want to underline here is an important methodological point. These percentages represent the proportion of studies examining each domain. They are not prevalence rates, and they are not measures of causal strength. Okay, we're not saying that 90.3% of children experience digital risk. Okay, while international organization, okay, they've done their exercise there, and they are saying that 1 of 12 children are subject to child sexual exploitation and abuse. But the research that is being done, the academic research that is being done in this area says that 90.3% of children experience digital risk. The result, therefore, reveals both strength and a gap in the evidence base. Research is strongest in identifying visible digital behaviors, but considerably thinner in explaining the relational and family conditions that may determine whether exposure progresses toward exploitation, okay, with time, whether a child feels safe enough to disclose, whether at home or at school, are they safe to disclose what is happening to them, and whether recovery is supported in whether the community, in the, okay, and so on. So what is easiest to observe and measure by researchers is not necessarily what is important to prevent, okay? And you probably heard about of the deep web, for instance, that almost no one mentions, okay? And the number of perpetrators there. Digital and behavioral risks. Now, these were the dominant risk domain, it was the dominant risk domain. Across the studies, repeated patterns included high online exposure, intensive platform use, personal disclosure, contact with unknown users, relationship building online, movement toward offline meetings, sexualized exchange, and so on. Okay? But here we need to communicate the findings carefully. A digital behavior is not an invitation to abuse. If child who shares information, seeks friendships, experiments with identity, or makes a poor decision is not responsible. That child is not responsible for another person's exploitation. Okay? So this is extremely important. Responsibility for the harmful act never shifts to the child whose image or trust was violated. It remains with the person who manipulates, coerces, threatens, deceives, or distributes the material. When that person is also a child, accountability, when the perpetrator is also a child, accountability must be developmentally appropriate and accompanied by safeguarding, assessment, education, and rehabilitation. Both children may require protection and support, but the harm must still be clearly recognized and stopped. Okay. At the same time, prevention must address the design of digital platforms, features that encourage personal sharing, speed up relationships, connect children with strangers, conceal users' identities, and enable content to be created and distributed instantly, okay, which can increase opportunities for exploitation. So this is also something that needs to be addressed. Most included studies here that we went through, that we reviewed, were cross-sectional, so direction and actually timing remain uncertain. So the correct conclusion is not control the child, okay? It is reduce exploitive opportunity, strengthen judgment, create safer design, and make disclosure possible without blame. This is the second major domain. It's the psychosocial vulnerability. Now, when we look at this, I need to maybe shorten this a little bit. These should not become labels attached to the child. They describe a context in which a child may be more likely to seek validation, connection, escape, or reassurance, needs that a manipulative person can exploit. So again, this is very important. Now, they describe a context in which a child may be more likely to seek validation, connection, escape, or reassurance. Okay? So these are needs that a manipulative person or network can exploit. A perpetrator may offer attention before demanding secrecy. They may imitate affection before introducing coercion. They may identify loneliness and present themselves as the only person who truly understands. And this is why digital safety lessons alone are insufficient. A child who knows every privacy setting, which we, let's say, those who raise awareness, they ask the children whether they know about these measures. Let's say they know them 100%. But what about a child who knows all this, but feels profoundly isolated by the family, by friends, by peers, by the school, and so on? They may still be vulnerable to someone offering belonging. Safeguarding must include, therefore, emotional support, okay, trusted relationships, and so on. So this is extremely important. The mental health care of children must be also taken into account. Okay, so there must be adults in the surrounding of the child that can listen, okay, to the child without panic, without punishment, without judgment, okay, so that, okay, they open up, and then the adult will, if they are professional in the field, then they can help them. Okay. Sorry. Next. In this slide, we cover the demographic and developmental factors that, and they are not uniform. We have the gender, age, and under-examined groups. And here, the main takeaway is that prevention must begin with local realities, as we've been mentioning all the time. Risk is shaped by developmental stage of the child. Okay, children are growing, they keep changing, and we need to take this into account. We take into account their maturity level, their social context, and the form of exploitation, not by a single universal profile. Okay, so safeguarding children is a universal thing, but the local realities must be taken into account to be able to help children. Now, in these studies, mainly female gender was more consistently associated with heightened vulnerability, while male gender emerged as a risk factor for specific outcomes. So male children are still at risk. Okay, even with age, because the studies we covered were for children less than 18 years old, older adolescents, they faced risks linked to greater autonomy and sexual exploration. At some ages, they need to start exploring their identities. Younger or less mature children were more vulnerable to power imbalances, manipulation, and coercion, sometimes by a family member, by a peer, okay, not necessarily by a online stranger like what the media tries to tell us. Okay, plus the under-examined groups. Here, there aren't enough studies that cover the sexual minority youth, children with disabilities, where also perpetrators take advantage of their disabilities, and those with neurodevelopmental vulnerability. Now, the family shield. This is what we call here, we call it family shield. Actually, we describe supportive households as family shield. The studies associated vulnerability with reduced care. Okay, parents aren't taking care of their children, and they are not providing them with enough emotional support. They don't monitor them enough. Okay, and there are barriers to disclosure. The child is afraid of telling the parent of something that occurred to them, okay, because they are afraid to be blamed, to be shamed, and so on. And sometimes because of family conflict between the husband and the wife, okay, so that is also problematic. There is instability, stress, dysfunction of the family. So the socioeconomic and educational factors were examined less consistently, and their direction varied. So the educational level of the parents, okay, wasn't really an indicator of whether the child will be more vulnerable to child sexual exploitation and abuse, because sometimes the parents were extremely educated and still this happened. And sometimes the parents, they don't have good income and still this happened, and sometimes it didn't happen. So education level is not, it's the emotional support. It's the continuous surveillance of what the children are doing. It's for being there for them when they need you, and sometimes when they don't, okay? And the parents, after all, they play a role model for their children. So if parents will be spending most of their time on digital devices, this is what the children will end up doing too, okay? So we can't blame them for that. Okay, a prevention message designed for a 10-year-old cannot simply be repeated to a 17-year-old. One may need clear instruction about secrecy, trusted adults, and manipulation. The other may need nuisance, discussion of consent, pressure, intimate relationships, image-based abuse, and sexual extortion. We also found that sexual minority youth, children, and disabilities, as I mentioned, okay, that do not really appear in the literature as they should. More funding should be placed there in that area so that, okay, we become more knowledgeable. So prevention must begin with local realities like age, okay, disability, gender expectations, family norms, language, access to services, and the particular form of exploitation being addressed. Okay. Let me mention this. For faith communities, for faith communities, the image of Jesus growing in wisdom and stature offers a powerful model of protective formation, care, learning, community, moral guidance, and belonging before public responsibility. This is what parents need to do also with their children, not giving them the screen at 1 year old or less. Okay? Because children do need this. Our Jesus, okay, our God had this. What about our children? Care, learning, community, moral guidance, belonging, before you give them the device. Okay? So this is very important. The family shield is not built in the moment of crisis. It is built in ordinary conversations long before the child needs to say, something has happened to me. Long before. Long before. Now, the next slide covers perpetrators. And I need to shorten this a little bit. Okay. So perpetrators, again, are not always strangers, are not always met online. Okay? Sometimes they are very close to the child. They are very close to the child. They can be a peer, a family member. Okay? So beware of those cases too. Next, it's the emerging strong risk, which is the AI CSAM. Okay, we are still in the process of studying this. Okay, we're running another research on this important factor. So, and we have also submitted manuscripts in this regard. Okay. Okay. The key AI insights and the response gap. 3 insights deserve emphasis. First, AI-generated image-based sexual abuse is wider and more organized than many people assume. It is not confined to anonymous offenders in hidden online spaces. It can emerge among peers, within schools, inside intimate relationships, through commercial services, and across networks that exchange models, prompts, and generated content. Second, the harms are multidimensional. They are psychological, relational, educational, reputational, cultural, and sometimes political. A fabricated image can be used to discipline a girl for violating gender expectations, silence a young activist, humiliate a classmate, punish a former partner, or extort a child. Third, takedown alone is not enough. Takedown is essential, but it is downstream. A copied image may reappear. A child may still face school exclusion, family conflict, or community stigma. Evidence may be lost. Services may disagree over jurisdiction, so the victim may receive technical help, but no emotional support. The emotional support is as important as the technical support. So a serious response may be layered, clear law, safety by design requirements for AI developers, detection and reporting systems, platform action, school protocols, trauma-informed support, law enforcement, capacity, and public education. Now, I will move to the last one. Okay? I don't want to keep you longer. And I added this slide on purpose because in Lebanon we had several events where occurrences where children committed suicide because of AI, and they got extremely abused. We have around 600 cases per year of child sexual exploitation and abuse. So I need to say this: when young people lose their religious and spiritual grounding, they may face growing struggles and begin seeking answers in artificial intelligence, like Matteo Habib, one of Lebanese 14-year-old who committed suicide a month ago. He was seeking answers from AI. So this is why I'm saying here, when young people lose their religious and spiritual grounding, they may face growing struggles. Tragically, this can sometimes lead them toward feelings of despair or even thoughts of suicide, and this is happening. Many families are now trying to sue Facebook and OpenAI and so on because of occurrences like this one. It highlights the critical importance of guiding them back to a sense of purpose, hope, and community. This is the priests, what they are doing in our community. So I'll end up with, but Jesus said, let the little children come to me. 2026 years ago, okay, we still believe in this. Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nazir, for widening our lens really to this digital and technological space where we also need to see that exploitation is happening there. So it's a very important and developing area, actually, we need to look at. And Nazir is coming from Lebanon. So, and as I understand, tomorrow you are going back to Lebanon. Yes, he's forced to go tomorrow because otherwise he would have presented tomorrow. So I would suggest, as final, we just stand up and pray together the Our Father for Nazir, his family, Lebanon, and all places of violence. Who art in heaven, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And may our good Lord bless you, your family, the people in Lebanon, and in so many other places where there is war and violence.